You were last on, it was episode 66,
Wow.
which is 157 weeks ago, which is almost to the day 3 years ago. It doesn't feel that long ago, does it?
It doesn't, no, but it also fair play to the pair of you for sustaining this and maintaining it for that period of time because it's not an easy thing to do every week.
Especially with
Yeah.
him. It's a nightmare. I'll put that in at the start.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity Podcast, episode 223. Yes, episode 223. We are joined by a very special guest today who I will introduce in a minute. If you are listening on the day of release, as I know many of you do, it is the 6th of December, Friday the 6th of December. So we are in December. We are closing in on Christmas. It's, I love Christmas. I don't know about how, Pete, do you love Christmas?
I wouldn't say I love it. I'll tolerate it. It's
Helen,
just...
do you love Christmas?
Yes, I do. Do you know what? This year I will. I'll explain why in a minute.
Are you skiing?
No, not this year.
Oh,
No,
okay. Yeah, okay.
better than that.
Ah, better than that. Okay, brilliant. Yeah, so we are the 6th of December. Just check in with Mr. Peter Lant, and I've got some news to tell him, which I waited till we started recording, because I think it's quite funny news, but I think he's going to like it. Anyway, how are you doing, Pete? You okay?
I'm all right. I'm a bit nervous now, but yeah, I'm all right.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah. This is going to be a great episode actually, because it'll be very poignant. Like, I'll share it and stuff because it'll be poignant for some of the people who come along on the walks. Because there's a lot of women in their sort of 40s and 50s who come along on the walks who will be interested in this, and Sean as well, to be fair. So, it's going to be a good one.
Excellent. Yes. Well, what I would needed to tell you, Pete, is we've had someone recently book onto the walking weekend next June from the gym, who's another Peter. He's called Peter Buckley. And I spoke to him in the week. He's signed up to come on the walking weekend. And he said to me this week, I'm coming because I want to meet Peter Lant.
No, you don't.
He does. That's what he said. He said,
all right, okay.
He listens to the podcast and he said, I'm coming along. I want to meet Peter. So I said, oh, fantastic. I'll make sure I tell him. So
I do like videos in the group. I've got the Walk Bath Facebook group, which has got like 2,000 people in it or something.
Yeah.
And I do videos in there all the time, and he watches them sometimes. So I'm like, oh, hello, because I know who he is. I don't know him. I've never met him, but I know he goes to your gym. And all that sort of stuff. So I'll say hello, and I hope you're coming next year on the walking weekend. So he's obviously listened and said,
so you'll meet him. So he's coming.
You've made it, Pete. You've made it. That's it now. Fame. Tick.
So yeah, he's coming to Bath next June, which would be fantastic.
I'll tell you what, with that connections and stuff like that, the mercher who I use for the merchandise, for the caps and stuff like that, they got in touch with me to help me out. So Helen, you might want this for merch and stuff like that, actually.
Yes, I do.
This is it's a bit of an advert for them. I mean, like, I'm not getting paid anything by that. It's all free. They got in touch with me to help me out with stuff, and they do personalized t-shirts, so you can get people to put their names on them above the logo or whatever. And they don't do it yet, but they can do it in the background, and they're putting a logo on the front, and then I can have like milestone t-shirts with like a 10 on the back, like a football shirt, footprints, and people can put their name across the top. And it costs like £2 more or something like that. So
that's brilliant.
Why am I saying that? There was
What's
a
the name of the company?
It's Mercher, merchr.com. They're in the UK as well. They print them, they do it all up, and they produce them in Manchester. And there's a reason why I'm saying that, and I can't remember what it is. But anyway,
maybe for the walking weekend, I don't know.
Oh no, yeah, they've said they want to bring a group of people from, because the office is based in London. The printing happens in Manchester. They want to bring a group of people from London to come to Bath to go on a walking week, like to join one of the walks. And I was like, oh yeah, brilliant, fantastic.
That's fantastic. Oh, that's great.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, that's great. That's really, really good. So we will. Yeah, let me introduce you now. So we've already just spoke to her, but Helen, how are you doing?
I'm really well, thank you, and thanks for inviting me back. As we were saying just before we went on air, I can't believe it's been 3 years.
I know. I was just going to say, before we get too deep in the conversation, if you are a newer listener, I mean, this is a long time. So this is episode 223. Helen Hall was last with us on episode 66, which I worked out was 157 episodes ago, or 157 weeks ago, which is almost 3 years ago to the day. So we're going to be kind of talking about some different stuff today, and obviously updating with Helen. But if you haven't listened to that episode, because what we probably won't do is go back and do the kind of the origin story and talk about everything from the past with Helen. We might touch on some stuff again, but I'd recommend that, or certainly if you listen to this episode and want to listen to more of Helen, go back to episode 66 or listen to episode 66, then come forward and listen to us again now, because the last time we had Helen on, I did have it up on my screen. Good. It was called Navigating the Menopause with Helen Hall, and the image we used was a lovely skiing picture, which I've got there. Okay. And then today we are going to be talking about a range of topics. We've got a list of kind of, I suppose little starting points for conversation, but we're very organic and very relaxed on this podcast, as you know, so we're never quite sure what we're going to spend more time on than others. But yeah, so Helen, I suppose to begin with, for people who haven't listened to the first episode, do you just want to maybe just give us a kind of a couple of minutes, sort of like an intro, because you may introduce yourself slightly differently now than you did 3 years ago as well, like a little bit about yourself, where you're based, how old you are, what you do, where you kind of are within the kind of the fitness, strength, health industry. And then kind of, yeah, we can kind of go from there, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So, gosh, so I'm Helen Hells Bells, okay, and obviously my parents must have seen it in the stars when they named me Helen, because it was very apt that I ended up working with kettlebells. So my business is based in Portishead, in just about 25-30 minutes outside of Bristol. If you're travelling down the M5, the service station at Gordano is about 2 minutes from my house. So I'm always saying to people, if you're off to Devon or Cornwall, you should come and stop at mine rather than at the services, and then you can come and have a check out of my gym and a coffee with me. So the business at Hells Bells has been going is 7 years now going on. I've got 95 club members now. And I would say, without really realizing it, I've got kind of a niche of where I now predominantly work with women who are in their sort of 30s, 40s, 50s. Some are in their 60s. And my eldest individual, although he's still with me, he's 81 now. So I don't tend to attract the youngsters. But I think that's mainly because of the philosophy and the values that I adhere to, which is I'm not there to make or break someone. I don't, it's not trained to failure. I'm not repping them to exhaustion. My philosophy is around staying safe, keeping strong, and being fit for life, really. So, and that's kind of what I would say in the last 3 years is that's evolved. That's definitely evolved. Possibly because I'm getting older too, because I'm now 50. I'm 53 now. So not getting any younger and needing to look after myself in a slightly different way, I would say.
I think that's really because I'm currently, we spoke last time, I think, Pete, on the podcast, where I'm reading Paul McElroy's new book, Perpetual Strength, just about getting stronger and his comfort zone expansion method, and kind of getting stronger year in, year out, but not ever, by expanding the comfort zone, by not kind of training to failure, by not working stupidly hard, by being very sensible, by being very measured, by avoiding injury, by all those kind of things. So I think it's certainly with Pete. I think you're a year or two older than me, Pete. Are you?
I am now. As we record this, I'm not. But when it goes out, I'm 48.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, so I'm 46. Like you said, Helen, you're 53 now. So we're all kind of within sort of like 5 or 6 years of each other. And I think, yeah, definitely as you get a bit older, and as you change and as you learn more, then the way you coach and the way you teach and the people you attract change as well, don't they? So
I think so. Yeah.
What I'd say as well, just quickly, sorry, is is just to pick you up on this. You said I'm not getting any younger, but what's happening is you're getting older more slowly than most people
with any
because of,
luck.
because of what you do. Anyway,
Not
carry on.
going down without a fight, basically, Lee.
And what did you?
Um,
I think just before we started recording, you said or I think it was actually when we were recording, you said you're looking forward to Christmas this year more than you normally would, and then you just
yeah.
kind of, do you want to? Can you tell us why? Is it? I don't know
So
why.
we're off to Australia this year.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, my son is currently having a year out and is playing cricket in Australia. So we are heading out to see him. So he left 7 weeks ago, nearly 8 weeks ago now. So can't wait on a whole host of levels. Never done that part of the world before, but also gonna the opportunity to go and see him. So that'll be good fun.
Will there be a Boxing Day test and all that sort of stuff? I don't know.
Oh, we've got tickets. We've got
Yeah,
tickets.
because Sean's dad loves. He's bonkers about cricket and he coaches cricket and all that sort of stuff, and he has done his whole life. Sean
Yeah.
was born in Sheffield in the 70s,
Okay.
right? They moved to Sheffield. Her and her sister were born in Sheffield in the 70s because you had to be born to play for the county in the
hmm
county, didn't you? So they moved to Sheffield, had 2 girls, and then and then moved to Guernsey. But yeah, she's been to like loads of like South Africa and stuff like that, but loads of Boxing Day tests and stuff like that. I used to do it every year. Well,
Yeah,
whenever,
can't wait
you know.
actually. I think our whole trip will be fairly cricket focused because you probably realise from my social media that cricket features quite heavily in our lives. All three of my family or boys play. So husband is a wicket keeper. Ellis is he's a decent batter and a spin bowler, and Johns is a fast bowler as well. So they life literally revolves around cricket in the summer. And one of the things I've started to do recently, I put a post up about this last night, is I've just taken it up myself. Um,
Ah,
so you're
okay.
never too old to learn a new skill, are you?
Well,
Um,
we've had James Brees obviously on a few times
yes,
about
because he does
Welsh.
a lot with cricket, doesn't he?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
he plays in the Welsh over 40s team, I think
Mm,
now. And he went out to
yeah.
the World Cup in, I think that was New Zealand, where he went
hmm
for with the Cricket World Cup for the over 40s. And yes, but he was talking actually about the expansion of and the increase in popularity of women's cricket kind of
Cricket, yeah,
globally, and he said
yeah.
it's a really kind of growing sport, so
Mm.
excellent,
It's
excellent.
it's brilliant fun. And you know what? From a coaching perspective, it's doing me good. I wouldn't say I was necessarily a complete beginner, but because I've kind of immersed myself in cricket all my life. My dad played cricket as well, so I literally can't escape it. But I've never been formally coached to play cricket. So going back to being a beginner is so enlightening because it reminds you of what it's like when you're trying to coach people that are beginners. And you're looking at people and thinking, God, I get how hard that is. Because someone's saying to me, oh, all you need to do is this. And I'm like, can't do it. I can't do it yet. But I am loving it. Oh, and I ate in places that I just didn't even know I could eat. Considering I'm fairly strong, physically active, consider my mobility to be pretty good for a 53-year-old. On a Thursday morning like today, I wake up and I'm like, oh, I feel like I've been hit by a bus.
It just goes to show, doesn't it, that there's a lot involved in just standing around.
Yeah, yeah.
I've now pissed off all the cricketers again.
Dear. No, because when you mentioned obviously that you were looking forward to Christmas this year, I kind of mentioned skiing because that's something that I
Yeah,
know you do every year as well. Yeah, so but going to Australia for Christmas is about as far away from going skiing as you
skiing.
can
Yeah,
get. It's their summer obviously over there and all the rest of it. Oh, that's fantastic. So no, that's really good. So yeah, so the business is growing well. Like you said, you've got about 95 members that you do group
yeah.
training predominantly with, I think, involved with.
Yeah, small group training in the day, and then I host larger classes outside at a local school where I just hire the facility 4 times a week, and they're really nice to me and let me store my bells there, so I
Mm.
don't have to, like you, Pete, I don't have to ship them around. But and I get bigger numbers at that. So I, up to 25, 30 at an evening class. Do you know what? I'm so fortunate to do a job I love. And I really mean that. I used to teach, as you know, as a PE teacher and assistant head. And actually, for me now, I'm getting to to work with people that want to learn, which sadly, with teaching and kids, isn't always the case. So the people that present to you are there because they really want to be there. So every day is great, isn't it? We're really
Yeah.
fortunate with what we do.
That's excellent. So one of the things that we like I say, we've got a few sort of ideas we kind of you pinged across the other day about things. So I suppose really the first thing on there was sort of what's happened since the last podcast, and you obviously mentioned that you've maybe got a bit more clarity and a bit more deliberate focus and around your tribe, if you like, and the people that you
Yep.
resonate with and what you want to do, and maybe also how you coach them as well. But has anything else really kind of changed for you in the last, it may, I suppose sort of business wise and personal wise? Because we mentioned sort of like menopause and stuff last time you were on 3 years ago when I think you'd probably just turned 50, or you were 50 then and you're 53 now. So yeah, kind of what's really changed in the last 3 years for you and your life?
I think the first thing I would say from a business perspective is I think I've finally come through the COVID hangover. That was that really was hard, not least because COVID was tough and we all obviously had to adjust and go online overnight. But then I think we came out of that, and I don't know whether I was complacent. I just thought everything would go back to normal, and it really didn't. And I had a huge drop off in club numbers. Probably, if I look back, about a third of my membership. And I get it. It was because finances went up, the world became more expensive, people were cutting back on their luxury items, which coaching is. And suddenly there I was, really having to sort of work hard. Almost, I felt like I was running to stand still. The moment recruit someone new, someone else would leave, and it felt like I was doing that for an awful long time. And I would say it's only the last year where I feel that I finally started to grow the business again and feel like I'm in a more stable place, which is quite a relief because when you look back on it, that's been nearly 5 years, hasn't it?
Mm.
I
Yeah,
don't
because
know
it
if
was
you
like
echo that.
2020, was it 2020, 2021, wasn't it? I think that was that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's yeah, no, I know what you mean. And I think it wasn't even as
Just
much.
going to go and suck my dog out.
Okay. Your dog's asleep, isn't it, Pete?
Yeah,
Sid's,
he's like I say, he's asleep. He's got his little blanket,
yeah.
and which has got a hole in it because he's had
Mm.
it since he
She
was
just
like,
wants to play.
yeah.
She's just turned up with a sock and was like, "I want to play," and I'm like, "No, not now."
Yeah, Sid, we'll just be yeah, Sid's in his basket with Sean's sock as well because she's obviously out at work, so he walks around with a sock because it smells of her.
Oh,
Yeah, no,
so
I think, yeah, I agree. I understand what you're saying, definitely. And I think sometimes people don't, it's not, people don't necessarily make decisions or financial decisions based on what is actually happening to them at the time. They kind of make a decision based on the fear of what may happen, So it's
yeah,
almost like the uncertainty. So it's almost
mhm,
like, well, this might happen. So I'm going to kind of preemptively, change things and stuff. Because, but yeah, no, I
yeah,
agree. Now
It's
we're going into 2025 in a few weeks, aren't we? And we're kind of, that was a good few years ago now. So seems like everything's settling down a bit, certainly.
yeah.
What did you say,
But
Pete? Sorry.
I'm never
Sorry.
complacent about it. Never be
Hmm.
complacent. You just can't with it when you're running your own business, can you? You've got to
Yeah.
keep out there,
it's
make sure people are aware of you, and keep plugging away, as it were.
well, that's
Mm.
the thing. It's interesting because you can grow and grow, but if you stop telling people about it, then it stops, doesn't it? That's the thing because you
Yeah.
try and rely on other like word of mouth and stuff like that, and you've got to be consistent. It's like training, it's like everything else, and it's like what we'll be talking
Yeah.
about as well. If you're consistent with lifestyle and
Mm,
how you look after yourself and how you train and how you run your life and how you run your business or how you turn up at your job or whatever, it's still there, and
yeah.
it goes up and down. But if you want,
Hmm.
it's like anything. It's like weight loss, isn't it? You want the trajectory to be in the right direction. It won't
Yeah.
always be going in the right direction, but as long as the trend is,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
it's fine. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
learning to ride the highs with the lows.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
it's more of a mindset management, isn't it, of the emotions that go with it, and managing the emotions rather than the actual numbers.
Yeah, yeah,
But
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And what's happened to you kind of, I suppose, so business wise, that's where you're at, you know, like you say, finally kind of, you know, stable again and positive and growing and you feel you've kind of turned a corner on that. And with your own kind of, I suppose, menopause journey or your own health, fitness, training, strength, HRT, all that kind of stuff. Has anything really changed much in the last 3 years for you? Has it been a constant kind of learning process or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was listening to Claire and her podcast on one of my dog walks this week, and so much of what she said echoed with me, really. I think she talked a lot about it being a journey, and there's no question it is a journey. So 3 years ago, when I spoke to you about it, I'd sort of just started my HRT. And I felt like I was in a better place because my anxiety levels had increased. And as someone who was level-headed and considered myself to be fairly rational, that was alien to me. I then made the decision about 18 months later. I came off the HRT. And the reason I did that, well, again, it echoed with what Claire said, was because actually looking back on it, I was progesterone intolerant. And the progesterone had a huge impact on my skin. So much of what Claire was saying about the rosacea and the spots. And I know it isn't all about how you look physically. I know we shouldn't get hung up on that. But when you are front facing, when you are a coach, when you are someone who is standing up in front of people every day and you're piling on the weight, which is absolutely what happened. I felt like I was bloating. My skin looked dreadful. I just thought, I don't need this. I don't want this HRT because it's making me feel worse physically. I might be feeling better emotionally in myself. But I then went down. So I came off it. I completely came off it. And I don't regret doing that actually, because what happened was it allowed me to sort of almost stabilize myself. And then I made some quite serious adjustments to my nutrition because I thought, I'm not going down the route of hormone therapy. I'm going to see whether or not I can manage this nutritionally. So I then changed my focus, as it were. Not that my nutrition wasn't dialed in before, but I kind of looked at things a bit more seriously, did some reading around it, a lot more research, and made some significant nutritional changes, particularly focusing on that protein. And I know we bang on about it all the time, and I'm preaching to the converted, but Claire said one of the things she said in her podcast was most of the women that she works with are not eating as much protein as they think they are, and they're overeating on calories. And that's absolutely the case. I was under eating on my protein and overeating on my calories. Thought I was eating a balanced, well, really good diet, and actually I needed to change that base, that what was appearing on my plate. If you break it into a pie chart, in effect, of your macros. So I've really worked hard on upping my protein and trying to sustain that. And that has helped me to control a lot of the sort of side effects that you get. For example, if I go off track, have a few glasses of wine, eat a little bit more sugar-loaded food, more carbs, whatever, my sweats come back. My night sweats come back. I don't sleep as well. I feel more anxious. Cut that out. I don't suffer from the sort of the sweats at all. I can manage it, I can regulate it. And I really believe that is down to nutrition and water. And then the long-term effect or the impact of that is I sleep better, so I feel better, so I'm more able to train. It's
And
this
if
cycle.
you sleep better and feel better, you're more likely to make better decisions as well, aren't you? You know, if you're not tired and stressed, you know. So
Yes,
this is really interesting, actually.
yeah, for sure.
I love this, Helen. So because a couple of the things that we've got written down, we'll talk about training a bit later. You know, in terms of the adjustments you may have made now that you're 53 and things like that. But three of the points we've just kind of touched upon there was nutrition and why protein becomes even more important as we age. And I think this is certainly applicable to women in menopause, but also applicable to men as well. But we'll talk about that.
Mhm.
The impact of
Yeah, yeah, for
alcohol.
sure.
You just mentioned alcohol as well, and you just
Mhm.
mentioned sleep. And these are three things that are, sometimes we do podcasts and I get feedback from people where they sort of say, oh, that went a little bit technical or went a little bit over my head, or, but I think that if we're talking about food, nutrition, diet, protein, alcohol, and sleep, it's three things that we all do. Some people may not drink any alcohol at all, but to some lesser or greater extent, we all eat, we all sleep. um, Most of us will have a drink now and then. Some people drink
Yeah.
more than others. But yeah, so maybe that was a broad. What can you be a bit more specific in terms of the changes you made to your diet? You mentioned being more focused on protein. I know we're not giving medical advice to people here,
No,
talking about your experience, but in terms of protein, how would you track that? How much were you trying to get? What were you using as your protein sources and that sort of thing? Can you kind of maybe
absolutely.
paint
Yeah, yeah.
a picture for us? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I will caveat that this is my journey and I'm not saying anyone else should do it. I really am not, but it definitely has supported me. I think the first thing is it's starting to look at getting over 100 grams of protein a day. So rather than being calorie focused, think about the amount of grams that you're getting. I think that's a great rule of thumb for a woman to aim for 100 plus grams if you're trying to keep it simple. Anything more is a bonus. So,
Mhm.
in order to do that, I found you had to have some form of protein on your plate for every meal. It's as simple as that.
Mm.
Um, and I think if you focus on making sure that happens, then your protein will increase naturally. A lot of women I find, and I'm not going to say I have done this myself, like whether it's, there are fors and against, but a lot of women, they fast because they believe that is a way to reduce their body weight. And actually, the moment you put fasting into it, it can make it more challenging then to get that 100 grams plus of protein in a day. Because if you take out that meal, that first meal of the day, which is often the one that people miss out, you then you're 12 hours into fasting, which has its benefits. I know, James, that you're a big advocate of it, but I'm not sure that there was a period of time that worked for me. I'm having changed that of late. I do feel better for it. I feel more energized. I feel I'm snacking less. I'm fuller for longer. But what I do need to make sure is that I'm putting the right food into my mouth at breakfast as opposed to poor choices. And I know that there's a difference if I grab and reach for something that is more sugary and not as nutritional or isn't quite as satiating, then I do find I then snack more throughout the day.
Yeah,
So
it's interesting. Sorry, go on, Pete.
what would you say? What sources of protein? Because this is the question I get when I say this to people, and they go, "Yeah, but well, how do I do that then? Like, what do I eat? Do you know what I mean? So, what source? Because
Yeah,
there's protein in, people. You say Greek yogurt, and they're like, "Is there?" And they don't even know.
yeah,
So,
I
what
know,
would
I
you
know.
say? I mean, I did that this morning. I had a massive bowl of Greek yogurt, and there's loads of protein in that. It's
Mm,
great, and it fills you
for
up forever.
sure. I mean, for me, a staple part of my diet is eggs. I'm thankfully, I love eggs in any way, shape, or form, whether it's poached, scrambled, omelets. So that will be what a breakfast would look like for me. Lunch tends to be either a repeat of that in some way, shape, or form. Again, it's not very exciting, but it works.
Well, no,
Or
you see, I
two,
get that. I get that when you say like meat, fish, eggs, whatever, and people are like, "Well,
yeah,
that's not very exciting." It's like, yeah, but you can put spices on it. You can do whatever you like
yeah,
with it. You just have to like
change
put it
it
on the
up.
plate. Yeah.
Cook it in a different way. Tuna features quite heavily, and some type of, I'll often have a tuna for my lunch with a nice salad or or I'll add it into a sandwich of some description. Although I must admit, I don't eat a huge amount of bread. I do find that the carbs are certainly not my friend. They cause a lot of bloating, and as I've spoken to you about before, I try and manage my gut health as effectively as I can. And then for my evening meal, I just look at an alternative source of protein. That's when the meat comes in. So it will be the chicken, it will be the mince, it will be the fish, you know. So once you start to break it down into those elements, actually it isn't that difficult each day to get your 100 grams plus in a day. And one of the things that I was, you talk about the Greek yogurt, that's an absolute game changer for some of the people that I coach, but also cottage cheese.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
and
no,
people
I
don't,
love cottage cheese. Yeah, cottage cheese is
yeah,
lovely. Eat it out the tub. Yeah, yeah, no,
yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
people don't realize, do they, that there's so much protein in those.
I'm
So
not sure
it,
what Pete feels about cottage cheese because when I said, do you like
I've
cottage cheese, Pete?
I've
Just
got
your
nothing against
face.
it. I just
Oh, okay.
it never shows. No, the reason why is because we've mentioned it a few times we mentioned it with Phil Maffetone
Mm,
about curds and whey, and
mm,
he
yeah,
was talking about the whey, but cottage cheese is more curd,
mm,
but it's still got lots of protein in.
mm.
But
yeah,
I remember at that time I was like, I need to eat more cottage cheese, and then I just forget about it.
There's
yeah.
one thing I did tell her. I don't know if you've ever done this before, and I remember actually because we spoke to. I heard it on. I think I heard it on like Joe DeFranco's Industrial Strength show, and we talked about it with um, Phil Maffetone. I started using cottage cheese and whisking it with my eggs before I did
Mhm.
like a omelette or something. So if you have like an omelette with eggs and cottage cheese in, it's really, really fluffy and light and lovely, and it's a way of kind of add half a tub of
Bulking it out.
it's gorgeous. So yeah, I
Yeah.
mean it's interesting, isn't it? Because people, I'm sort of seeing a similarity here between what you said, Helen, whereby, or it might have been you, Pete, who said it, but with when you say to people, this is what you got to eat, they go, oh, that's boring, or oh, is that, that doesn't sound very exciting. And it's the same pushback you might get from people around training, like,
Yeah.
right, you're going to do this and it's like just these 5 movements or something, or 3 movements, and you're going to do them all the time, and it's like, well, yeah, that just sounds like it might get boring. And you're like, well, there's lots of ways you can slightly spice up training, and
Yeah.
you can slightly spice up your food as well, but effectively
Yeah.
it's what works, isn't it?
Again, it's consistency, it's discipline. It's habits, isn't it? And it's so easy to break those habits and to go down that sugary route, or that, eating, grabbing and reaching for food that isn't necessarily as nutritious, in the same way that it's easy to miss the training session and think, oh, I won't bother then today. It
Mm.
it comes down to, as we started at the beginning of the podcast, mindset, isn't it?
Mhm.
Mm.
And if,
It's
if
it.
we could sort people's mindset out, then we'd have it nailed, wouldn't we? But I don't. There is no golden ticket to it. There is
No,
no answer.
Yeah.
All we can do
it's
is continue to educate.
it's
Yeah.
interesting because years ago I was one of those people of like, or whatever, because it's like when you're younger, you get away with stuff and all that. But this weekend, I was in Devon this weekend, which you were as well, I think, weren't you? But the weekend just
Mm.
gone. And we
Yeah.
did a walk from Ilfracombe to Croyd. So the night before, we were staying in a place that only had a microwave and a tiny little kitchen thing. So, we went for a couple of beers, got a pizza. We're on a health podcast, and I'm going to say this, by the way, but anyway. And then the next morning, we were going to go to Ilfracombe, have breakfast before we did the thing, but we didn't, because we were like, well, we'll just get going. And Sean never eats all of a pizza, so we just basically ate the leftover pizza for breakfast, right? Because we were going to go and walk 13 miles, and it's undulating, like you said. So we
Yeah, it
did that,
was.
and then we got to the other end and got the bus back, had a couple of beers, and then we got fish and chips from a place. And then the next day we got
Sounds
up.
like an amazing weekend. Sounds
We went
Yeah.
down to Saunton Sands the next day and had like we just had like a breakfast bap thing from this cafe next to the beach. And then when we got back, we had a bit of food and stuff like that. But I didn't sleep very well. I
Yeah.
didn't feel rubbish, but I didn't feel my best all weekend. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because all that food isn't the best for you. But it was for like I feel great now because since Monday,
Mhm.
I've been eating like I
Back on
used
it.
to. That was a one-off. But this is
Yeah.
one of the things when people do that, like not even every weekend, but like a couple of times a week, or
Mhm.
and it starts to creep into your life of like, I haven't got time,
Mhm.
I haven't got time. And that was just one weekend. And that's where, for me, it's like, I know what it feels like to feel good. and I know how that makes me feel less good, not bad, but less good. So I know that if I carry that on, it's going to get worse. So therefore, after a couple of days, I'm like, do you know what? I don't want to eat. I don't even want like pizza or chip. I want something nice. I want something
Nice.
that's
Yeah.
going to like.
I always say to people, I don't, it's not that you haven't got time, it's just not a priority.
Yeah.
And if you reframe your thinking around that, whether it's training or nutrition, if it's important to you, you will prioritize it. And if it's not important to you, you will make all the excuses under the sun. And when people start to understand that and really drill down into that, then they can make better choices around their nutrition or their training. But if you're constantly going around in this state of, I don't have time, well, we're all busy. We are all busy individuals. You know, we're all juggling different things in our lives, but we still manage, you know, we prioritize what is important to us. And that's the bottom line, isn't it? It's important to me to eat well because I feel better for it. And I've got a responsibility to my children to be a role model to them, to show them that this is a positive way to eat. This will support them in their lifestyles with their cricket and their own strength training, which I'm, you know, encouraging them to do. I feel I've got a responsibility as a coach to walk the walk and talk the talk. And so therefore I prioritize it, but also mentally, I feel better for it. And when I'm not on it, and last week I wasn't on it, Pete. I had a few glasses of wine. We ate out. We had fish and chips. I did exactly what you did. I felt sluggish.
Disgraceful. How dare you?
I was
so that's
grateful
really
to get back to some routine.
so that's really important, and really I like that. That's that, you know, that, and I agree with that, and I use that myself for most women, the 100 grams of protein, because like you say, it's just a round number, it's easy, and the way that most, you know, like you say, most women or most people, most men as well, don't eat enough protein or don't eat as much protein as they think they do,
No,
and like it's the old Peter Drucker, you know, what gets measured gets managed, and like you say, just by taking into account, right, okay, I'm aiming for 100 grams here, and you start to look at, oh, okay, an egg, there's about 6 or 7 grams. Okay, a breast of chicken, there's
yeah,
about 20-25 grams.
20, yeah,
You know, a thing of yogurt, there's, you know, like maybe 20 gram, whatever. You kind of then can start thinking, okay, well, I've had 70 so far, I need to try and get another 30 in. And you can kind of, just out of interest, do you ever see that, do you ever have the need to, or do you ever take any kind of like whey supplement, you know, whey protein or any protein drinks or anything like that?
yeah.
You top up your
I
numbers.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I do. I've got a paleo bone broth protein shake that I take. And again, I've tried a lot of protein shakes over the years, but and they don't agree with me. They really upset my gut. But this particular one, this paleo bone broth one, it sounds disgusting. It's chocolate flavored. But you have,
Mm.
so getting your head around the fact that it's bone broth, but it's chocolate flavored, people go, I couldn't even consider that. It doesn't taste of bone broth.
Yeah.
It tastes really nice.
Because you can get like beef protein as well, can't you? Like beef
Yes,
protein isolate. There's like beef protein, like salted caramel flavor. You know, like
yes,
I've just made some bone broth. The dog goes nuts, and I've got it in the kitchen,
yeah,
and I drink that, and that tastes of bone broth, and it's lush.
yeah.
yeah.
Well, my one tastes of chocolate and it feels like an afternoon treat. And
Yeah.
I will add, I have it with a bit of coconut milk and a banana. And if I'm feeling extravagant, I might even add a bit of peanut butter in it.
Mm.
Um, and that to me at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, when I'm kind of just before I'm about to go off and do my evening sessions, that's perfect. It kind of ties me over and that whacks up your protein
So I'd
nicely.
imagine that's probably got around what, 25-30 grams per
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah,
So that's a, like you say, that's 30, if it's 30 grams, that's almost, you know, a third of what you need per day in one drink.
yeah,
So that's great. Okay, I love that. So that's a really good measure for people to think of, the 100 grams. And so it is more important as well, isn't it, as you age, to have more protein,
Yes.
and especially like for men and women, but people when they're in their 60s, their 70s, because I think we're not quite as good at kind of protein synthesis, protein synthesis as we get older, are we? So you kind of need to obviously you need to kind of take more in so you can, you know, if you're not quite so effective at processing it, it kind of gives you a bit of a buffer. I mean, what when you talk, you say predominantly women now in their maybe 30s, 40s, 50s and beyond that you work with. And I like you mentioned Claire's podcast that was on about 6 weeks ago, and she said, "I don't track calories, I track protein." You know, which was one of the phrases that stood out for me. Do you find that women have a focus on protein, or generally it's
No.
always been about controlling calories and keeping their weight
Yeah.
down, whatever? Yeah.
Totally, and you know, they go down the low fat route even to this day, and that frustrates the hell out of me because there's obviously they're loaded in substitutes and sugars and saccharins and all the things that actually are going to give you headaches and probably heighten your menopausal symptoms. And that's the bottom line, is that when I'm working with these women, I'm encouraging them to make these choices nutritionally to support them with the symptoms they're experiencing. You know, whether that be, it will reduce your anxiety, you will sleep better, you will have less hot sweats and flushes, you will feel more stable, less anxious. It all ties up. And I know it sounds evangelical, but it stems from your gut
Mm.
and what you put into your gut. And the moment that you deviate from that, and this is where Claire sort of talked about tracking, if you track exactly and have a good understanding of what you eat, drink, and how you perform day to day, you know very clearly when you go off track, like last week when you're on holiday or whatever, that you're going to pay the consequence for that, albeit it might only be 24 hours, 36 hours. But then what my role is, I feel, is to support people to understand how to jump back on, how to not then say, fuck it, that's it, I've ruined everything, I may as well just keep eating crap, and
Mm.
say, no, actually, I'm back to it now. And I'm going to draw a line under those days, those 3 or 4 days or 5 days of holiday where I've not eaten as well. I'm going to focus and I'm going to go back to what I need to do to improve my physical and mental well-being.
Mm.
It's interesting what you just said there about it sounding evangelical, because I don't think it does. I mean, it might do to certain people, but it's factual, right? It's not evangelical; it's factual. But
Mm.
it's
We're
funny because,
preaching to the converted, though, aren't we?
well, yeah, exactly. So preaching to the converted, but it's not evangelical.
Yeah.
Um, but no, because I saw something the other day, and there was people. I can't remember what it was. It was a news story or something. There was people commenting like, "Oh yeah, you've got to look after your health." It was somebody who couldn't do something anymore, that they wanted to do, and it's like, yeah, health and family and all that come first. And it was like, yeah, and you were talking about priorities earlier, and it's like, yes, and people say that, but they don't necessarily do it until they have to,
Yeah.
until health does become a priority, which it always is, but it's not. You know, people don't necessarily prioritize it until they get ill or until they become menopausal or until something happens. You know, Steve Bush was
Yeah.
talking about this, wasn't he?
Mm.
You know, and he was fine. He was like 30 odd stone, wasn't he? He said, and he was
Mm.
fine. He was fine. He was fine. And then all of a sudden he was like, I'm not fine. I'm going to die.
No.
And it's like, well, that's
Mm.
always been the case, really, if you're that
Mm.
weight. But, you know, so there's not a question in there. Sorry. I thought there was.
I no,
It's just,
you know what? I talk to people, you know, I run sort of these challenges with people around, and it's called an accountability challenge. Call it what you want, fat loss club, fat club, whatever. It doesn't matter. The bottom line is, I can, and people say to me, well, you should run them more often, or why don't you just run it all the time? And it's like, I can do that, but won't, you're not going to get the benefit from it because there's only so many ways that I can say to you, eat more protein, drink more water, get your steps in, sleep, get to bed a bit earlier, and then chuck in a couple of strength training sessions a week. And once, you know, and then obviously work on your nutrition and make sure you're getting your protein increased. Once you say that to people, there's only so many different ways you can couch it. And
Mm.
ultimately, the biggest single thing that is limiting there, because most of the people I coach now, they've got that understanding. They absolutely know what they should be doing. It's what goes on here that stops them from making the right decisions and choices. So it's drilling down into their mental well-being and the choices that they make and why they make them, setting themselves goals, understanding what their why is. Those are the key things, and then going back to revisit that why when things go wrong, going back to revisit how to make changes when things go wrong, so that they can refocus and continue to plod along. And none of us are perfect,
Mm.
and neither should we. Neither
It's
should we be.
interesting. Lots of the women that I have at my gym are in their in their certainly late 40s, but I'd say probably the biggest demographic is women in their 50s. 50s and 60s, and I do hear a lot. And it's very difficult for me, and I wouldn't feel comfortable because a lot of them, they say, "Oh, I'm having trouble sleeping. I don't sleep well, or I don't do this, or but it's just my age. It's just the menopause." And I'm certainly not saying that that's not a factor, but like you're saying, I think coming from you, coming from a woman of the same age, saying, "Well, yes, but there's also things that you're doing within your lifestyle that could make things a bit better." It's not saying it's not. It's not saying it's not a factor. It certainly is a factor. But one of the things that I want to talk about now, because this is a big thing for a lot of the people that I know and work with, is, and I'm not going to, I'm not going to generalize, but I'm going to get in trouble here. But a lot
Don't
of,
worry, don't worry. I'll say something
Don't be
more
us.
ridiculous.
Only the three of us.
It's not Pete. But for once, it's not Pete. It's a lot of these women in their 40s and 50s and even 60s drink a lot of alcohol. Yeah. And it's social, it's fun, it's parties, it's like, but it's sort of like birthdays and anniversaries and these bottomless prosecco brunches and these, like, all these things. Alcohol is just such a, and it's not just the women. I'll say, I'm talking about women now, but a lot of men drink a lot of alcohol because they go to the football and they're drinking pints beforehand and a half time and whatever. So I think it's a societal problem that
It's socially
alcohol,
acceptable, isn't
yeah,
it?
alcohol is like, and drinking alcohol to, you know, kind of excess is
Yes.
just widely
Mm,
accepted, that it's just kind of a
mm,
bit of fun, and
mm.
it's fun and it's just what you do. And if you go out for a night out, you probably, you have a few too many drinks. It's just part of going out. So yeah, I mean, you mentioned one of the things was the impact of alcohol, and you mentioned having a few wines and that sort of thing. But as someone myself who doesn't drink a lot, I have the occasional beer, but I might not. I don't think I've had a beer for probably the last month. You know what I mean? But what does alcohol? How do you find alcohol affects you? And from your knowledge and from working with people, especially people like of your, in menopause kind of age.
Well, firstly, I'm not going to say don't drink because I do drink.
Mm,
And it would be hypocritical of me as a coach to turn around to someone and say, you need to stop. But what I would say is that my understanding of the impact that alcohol has on me personally, particularly as I'm getting older, that awareness, it impacts on my mental well-being, it impacts on my anxiety, it impacts my sleep, it impacts my training without a question of a doubt. And then also impacts my nutritional choices the following day. Because I then, I just want to eat and I want to eat rubbish. So it, but again, it's awareness, isn't it? I know that it does that to me, and yet I still choose periodically, occasionally at the weekends to have the odd drink, and that's a choice I make because I enjoy it. I enjoy socially having a drink with my friends, but without a question of a doubt, over the last few years, certainly since I've hit 50, I've had to make a conscious decision to reduce the amount of alcohol that I can drink because I tolerate it less.
mm,
And the impact and the recovery from it is harder than it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I could drink and it just didn't even impact me.
mm. I mean, what do you feel around alcohol, Pete? I mean, you mentioned like a couple of beers. I know you know, stuff. And like I say, I'm not, all three of us, you know, none of the three of us are teetotal, you know. So I think that's like Helen said, we're not saying, you know, you're a terrible person if you drink and you shouldn't have a drink. But how do you find with you, Pete, as your drinking habits maybe now, and how they may affect you or how it's changed, you know, now?
Compared to what they were like 20 odd years ago, 30 years ago, I suppose now, actually, what am I, 48? Yeah. So very different. Because I used to get smashed. But my nickname, well, this was during work actually when I was in Swindon, was Peter Coherent, because I couldn't speak when I got pissed. But anyway, that was how bad it was. But that came from like a social thing with like a society influence from family and stuff like that, because my dad used to drink a lot and everything. But now I'll go to the pub and I'll have like 2 or 3 beers and then I don't want any more. I just don't want any more, because because I know what's going to happen. It's just like I just physically don't want any more. And that's it. You know, which again is probably quite a lot for some people. You know, but for me, I can kind of I choose what I drink in the pub. I don't go for 6-7% beers and all that sort of stuff. I don't drink Stella. I don't drink lager, like all of that sort of stuff. Like, you know, I'll drink something that is like relay or something like that and is relatively low percentage. But I don't have loads. Every now and then, you know, I might have like 5 or something if I'm on a night out with a couple of people. And that's about my maximum at the minute. So I can function the next day. But like just a couple.
I think what you can do, one of the things I will never tell someone not to have a drink, because I think, it's like anything. If you say to them, don't eat any sugar, don't have that chocolate, they're going to want more of it. In the same way, if you say to them, don't have those, give up drinking completely, they will crave it more. But there's choices that you can make to support you along that journey. So, for example, with some of the people I work with, I will, if they're looking to reduce their body fat and potentially reduce their weight, add some soda to your wine, make the drink longer, and then you'll drink less, but you're watering it down. Have a glass of water in between your glass of wine if you're at a restaurant, and rather than just back to back wine throughout the meal, maybe consider having a white spirit like a gin and a tonic, or a vodka tonic, as opposed to a dark spirit, which, the body, without going into the science of it, I know you guys know, but your body can break down the purer, the clearer spirits much more effectively and quickly, and they're less likely to deposit fat than if you have the darker spirits. So, avoid the beer, and maybe consider an alternative to that. If particularly, that's something I would advise with men. So there are choices that you can make, aren't there? The lower calorie, even low calorie drinks that are out there now, you can't taste the difference, can you? I don't know if you've tried.
I've no
have you tried
idea.
zero alcohol?
I've never tried it, but I'm gonna say the main choice I make is I drive everywhere.
Yeah.
So I drive. So I say to people, I'm driving, I'm gonna have 1 or 1.5, and then I'm
that's
done.
it.
You know, but because I've got 2 little kids, 5 and 8, there's not, no matter how you feel in the morning, they'll be jumping on you at like 6 o'clock in the morning. So there's no, but I just don't want it. I just know that I just don't have any more than 2 drinks. You know what I mean? 2 pints is, and I enjoy it though. I'd enjoy 2 pints of ale, like Pete said, like a real ale, 4%, 4.5% or something. 2 pints, that's fine for me. But that's what I say. That it's rare anyway. But no, I think that I think, like you say, it's people just need to be responsible. I mean, I don't know what Prosecco. I've never tasted Prosecco in my life, but I know people
Have you
drink a
not?
lot. I know people drink a lot of it. That's all I'm going to say.
Bottomless, you can get bottomless bottles of it, James.
I know, I know. Right. Anyway, what I want to move on to before we wrap up, I want to move on to sleep, Helen. Yeah. Now, obviously, you've already mentioned the ways that what you eat and alcohol affect sleep.
Without a doubt.
But negatively. But do you have any kind of you know, the sort of buzzword, I suppose, is sleep hygiene, you know, or you know, these sort of pre-sped routines and sleep. Have you got anything that you do that you find helps with your sleep, other than, you know, avoiding alcohol and watching what you're eating, the things that you know are going
Yeah.
to make sleep worse? I mean, what do you find in your experience?
If I'm honest, not massively, because I sleep like a log. The
Mm,
moment my
okay.
head, the moment my head hits the pillow, I'm gone.
Mm,
But I think that's because I'm so physically active in the day and constantly on the go. You know, not I'm not training 24/7, but I'm on my feet all day coaching. This is about the longest I've sat down all week, you know. I just
mm,
don't sit down because that's the nature of the beast. So for me, I don't have a problem with sleeping. I do take magnesium, um, but I don't necessarily take magnesium because of sleep issues. I might mainly take magnesium to support my joint health because I found that that aids the aches and the pains that have definitely got worse as I've got older. Um, and then obviously I take the vitamin D alongside that because it helps with the absorption of the magnesium. They do suggest that you take the two in combination. I'd love to say I shut my phone down half an hour earlier. I'd love to say that I do all of those things. I don't need to because I'm once I put my phone down and I'm in bed, I'm gone.
and it's like you say, you have not, you know, you have had times where sleep wasn't so good, but you realize, well, okay, alcohol makes me not sleep so well,
Yeah,
and eating certain foods makes me not sleep so well. So you've
yeah,
kind of made those changes and made those choices
yes,
that enable you to sleep better, which is
yeah.
great. So in terms of, you just mentioned magnesium and vitamin D, you also
Mm.
mentioned like your bone broth, chocolate
Yeah,
protein. Do you have any other kind of supplements or anything that you take at all?
creatine, that's it.
Okay,
Same as
Chris.
you guys.
I'm
Okay.
about to start. I've got some on the way. I sent James a message only yesterday, and I was like, "Do you know what? I'm going to start taking it because I've heard about, all the cognitive benefits and all that sort of stuff."
Yeah,
And as my training's getting harder at the minute, I'm knackered. I was like, "Right, I need some. I need something."
Yeah.
So yeah,
And what do you do, Helen? Do you take do you take 5 grams a day?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's
And
it.
I have actually
Simple.
noticed, if I know like I'm gonna have a really heavy day the next day in terms of training, or like when I went and did like a strongman comp recently, I doubled up and took 10 grams the day before. And I do notice that, you know, if you're not, I'm not
Okay.
saying you do it every day, but because it does help fire the energy production, you know, the muscle
Yeah.
contractions. I think that if you're going to do something really heavy,
Mm.
doubling up for the day before kind of is quite good. And then what was I going to ask? Oh, and you mentioned obviously you came off the HRT and then you really kind of dived into nutrition a lot more and things.
Yeah.
Have you gone
I
back
managed I
to it at
managed
all,
it.
or?
I managed my symptoms really effectively for about 18 months, 2 years. And then 6 months ago I had to go and see someone again
Mm,
around because and the main issue for me was aches and pains.
mm,
Honestly, I was waking up feeling like an old woman and it just was completely alien to me. And when I went to speak to them about it, they said, look, you just need to get some estrogen back into your body, and then the inflammation that is going on within your joints will calm down.
mm,
6 months on, I feel like a different person. So
mm,
I've gone, and Claire said this in her podcast with you. It very much is a journey because you've got to find which medication, because there's different types of estrogen, there's different types of progesterone routes that you can go down. You've got to find the one that works for you. And that's where and this is where the challenge is for women because often sometimes the doctors don't have the knowledge or the understanding. They prescribe what they're told to prescribe that is available within that context of that, that surgery. I was really fortunate. I went privately.
mm.
And so we were able to, there weren't any restrictions then on what she prescribed. So I've changed how I take my HRT. So I was originally doing a gel, which I would rub into me. I now take a very tiny, have a little patch that I apply twice a week. And then in order to overcome this progesterone intolerance, which I believe impacted my skin, I now take my progesterone rather than orally, vaginally, which isn't readily prescribed and isn't understood. So again, I'm not telling people to do that. Please don't think I'm medically giving advice here, but that has made a massive difference to me. And the absorption of that has helped. And I feel like my aches and pains have completely subsided. My training is better than it's been in a long while. Long
Is
while.
it is it the same stuff? Like,
Yes, exactly the same tablet.
that's
You
interesting,
just,
isn't it?
yeah,
So
you
there's
just
obviously
put
something
it,
going this way. It does something.
yeah.
That's interesting, actually.
Well, I believe
Um,
it's because it's going into the gut, and the other
yeah,
way, it's not
to
being
go nowhere
absorbed
near
in
the
the
gut.
gut.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ah, that's
yeah.
interesting.
And and just quickly, do you take any testosterone at all, or have you ever had?
No, I don't. I had my blood test levels done actually for that around just over probably 2 years ago now. And at that time, my testosterone levels were okay. They were fine. So they didn't need to prescribe it. So and again, you can't get testosterone on the NHS. You've got to get that prescribed privately. So it's not an easy thing to do. And there's an expense to that as well. I don't feel necessarily that I need my testosterone boosting. I feel like, a lot of people talk about a lack of sex drive, um, fatigue, needing to sleep excessively. That, these are some of the symptoms. There are lots more. You'd need to read around it more. But currently, for me personally, I feel like I'm okay with that. That the way I've got my HRT, the progesterone and the estrogen balanced at the moment, things are okay, but it's not something I wouldn't discount it in the future if I needed to.
It's really
Um,
interesting. So I'm glad I asked if you, because I know we spoke, you came off and then you were doing all the nutritional,
mm,
work and things. I'm glad I asked and you said you came back on, but obviously you came back onto it for kind of slightly different reasons. And you'd obviously sorted out a lot of the other stuff through
yeah,
natural means as well. But then you still had
yeah.
the aches and the pains and the body and the joint aches and things that you needed sorting out. I mean, that's fantastic. And I mean, we've been talking for about an hour, Helen. So but we haven't we will definitely get you back on again to talk about, because we haven't touched upon yet adjustments you made to your training and things like that in your is it worth us talking again about that, or have you made much adjustments to
Happy to,
training
but I
over
mean,
the last
do you know what? The single biggest factor I changed with my training, it's really simple. I don't train as much.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we didn't get you back on for another hour. No, no, but that's
Thanks for
No,
this.
it's a bit
no,
more
no, no, no.
complicated than
No,
that.
I know it is. I'm joking. I'm joking. But no, but we've got another 5 minutes or so. If you have, I mean, yeah. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
so that's interesting. So you don't train as much, and you feel like you get obviously as much benefit as you need from training a
Yeah,
bit. Yeah. So what does that
yeah.
look like in terms of, do you mean you train less frequency per week, or you do less volume per session, or what does it look like for you?
A bit of both, actually,
Okay.
to be honest. I think there is a tendency for a lot of women, particularly again when as we put on weight as we get older, that they almost use the exercise as a punishment. So
Mm,
I've overeaten, I've drunk too much. I need to therefore lose some weight. Therefore, I will beast myself. And normally it's with aerobic type activities, the running, etc. I'm not against running, just running isn't for me. I hate running. Um,
I'm
for
with you on that.
me, what I've changed is the intensity of my training is probably slightly reduced, but I still train regularly every day, pretty much every day, but only for short bursts. So
mm,
probably my training sessions each day are between 30 to 50 minutes,
mm.
if that, maybe, and if I'm having a day where I genuinely listen to my body and I say, today it's not happening, I don't go out there. I just give myself permission to go for a walk that day. Now, if you'd asked me that 10 years ago, then I would train hard, hard, hard all the time. I just can't do that now. I can't do that now. But I'm still maintaining my muscle. I'm still maintaining my strength. I would genuinely say I'm still having personal bests. You know, even at 53, I'm lifting heavier than I've ever lifted in my life. And the only regret I have is that I didn't find strength training earlier in my life
Mm.
because I came to it really late. You know, it's 10 years since I've started doing this. If I wish I'd found it and known about it in my 20s and 30s.
Yeah, but at least you started when you're about 43 or in the
Yeah,
early 40s, if
early
you like, and you're
40s.
in your early 50s now. But I mean,
Yeah,
good look at least you found it in your early 40s. And if you hadn't found it till your 60s or now, you know,
yeah,
you've probably done yourself that time that you started. I mean, as always, you know, it's the old cliches, you know, about the best time to plant a tree and all the rest
mm,
of it. But you know, the fact that you've got 10 years of training in already and now you're 53,
yeah.
that's been great, you know.
Mm. I've also got a great coach who he's been my coach now for 7, nearly 8 years, and he listens to me. We've got a
Mhm.
really open dialogue. I'm very honest with him, and he will then adjust and is happy to change my program to suit me, to help it fit me and my lifestyle. Because
Mm.
there are periods of time, you know, sometimes where the intensity does need to dial back, not because I can't physically do it, I might not have the time because of my family. Um,
Mm.
it's still a priority. It comes back to it is my priority. I will train consistently because I like how it makes me feel, not just physically, but mentally.
Mm. And who is your coach? Can you say?
So yeah, absolutely. He's done Strong First. I don't know whether some of
Matt
you,
Daniels, isn't
whether
it?
either of you, yeah, Matt Daniels. So he was around. When did he do his SFG? 12 years ago?
I don't know him. I know of him because he was a massive power. He got huge, didn't he? And he was a big power lifter and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, and he is a
Where's
power.
he
He
where's
still
he
is.
based? Is he down your neck of the woods?
Bristol.
Oh, is he?
Bristol.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's absolutely brilliant. He does all my programs for me. He's also now training in sports massage. So he keeps me completely going in the truest of senses
Mm.
because he knows what works in my body because he's
Mm.
seen me train for 8 years and he's absolutely great at picking up those finer details of when things are potentially not firing up, etc. And now he's doing the sports massage. He can really work on those areas too, which then benefits my training. So yeah, we get on. We know I've got a good relationship with him, and I think that's really important. Find a coach that you get on well with and that you can communicate with, and be honest with. Actually,
I think it's so good that I think all three of us have got coaches ourselves, and we are coaches
mm,
for other people. But I think if you buy into, if you espouse the benefits of coaching to others, but
mm,
then, like you say, it's talking the talk and walking the walk, isn't it? I think
yeah,
it's important to have someone tell you what to do and show you what to do, and give an impartial, because all of us, if we were programming for ourselves, we probably do more of what we like and less of what we don't like, and not what we need and all the rest of it. So no, I think it's brilliant. Oh, Helen,
oh, do you know my latest program is thrusters.
oh,
Thrusters feature a lot, and I'm gonna hate these thrusters by Christmas.
is that
But
with
it's
barbell or kettlebells?
kettlebells, double
Kettlebells.
bells.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's yes. I think in a minute I'm about to go and train. Actually, it's 10 rounds of 6 to 8 reps, double. So it's like 80 thrusters by the time I've finished.
Yeah.
Don't,
I
you
don't
don't-
like it.
honestly,
He's
my
only talked
sessions
to
at
me.
my
He's only
sessions at the minute are like 2 hours. Like, honestly, it's ridiculous.
I was going to say, you don't need to talk to me and Pete about volume.
No.
No, I know. I watch you. I watch you.
I just before coming back, I had 10 sets of 7 presses on each side with 28 kilos, just single bell, but so 10
Yeah,
sets of 7, a superset with pull-ups, and yeah. So
Yeah,
phenomenal.
quite a
very,
lot.
very, Helen, it's been so lovely catching up with you. It really has.
You
And
too.
I hope you have a lovely time in Australia this Christmas.
Thank you.
And I did see that your son was kind of out. I wasn't sure if he'd gone out on a like a scholarship or something, or like you say, he's on a a year kind of break, and he's playing cricket out in Australia. So yeah, I did see that. That's great, and I hope you have a lovely time out there. If people do want to, because that's been really honestly, that's so interesting, and I'm glad that we didn't spend a lot of time talking specifically around training, and we were talking more about, you know, things that people can apply to their everyday lives, which is really
For
important.
sure.
And the mindset, and just getting all the things in place. But if people do want to follow you and find out more and see what you're up to, what's the best way for people to do that?
I sometimes pop up on social media, not a lot, but Hell's Bells Hawley 13 is the where you can find me. But if you put in Hell's Bells coaching, you'll find it pretty quickly. So yeah, and it would be great if anybody wanted to reach out if they want to talk to me more about it. I'm always available. I will always answer any messages that anybody sends to me. I think it's a really big part of our coaching responsibility to support people in the widest context. So yeah.
And what are you most active on, Instagram or Facebook, or where do you kind of
I
spend your
kind of double up the two together, if I'm honest. I just
yeah,
link the pair. So
yeah,
it's on both. It's on both
yeah,
forums.
yeah,
Instagram, I think, has a wider reach. I think Facebook tends to be more local.
yeah. Excellent. No, that's great. Fantastic. Pete, anything you'd like to say as we wrap up?
No, it's been great. I think the protein thing, the 100 grams of protein, and not worrying about calories is great, because if people eat more protein, calories takes care of itself, doesn't it? Because you can't eat anymore. That's
Yeah.
the big takeaway.
I do think some
I
people
think.
need a little bit of guidance around calories, if I'm honest.
Yes, but like just I know, but it's just that for
Yeah,
me, I think that's the biggest takeaway for most
I
people.
agree.
If you
Yeah.
eat more protein, the calories will kind of start to take care of themselves, because
Yes.
you know, Dan John used to say, didn't he? He's like, eat a block of butter and then come back when you're hungry. It's like it's basically that, isn't it? So I think that's great.
Yeah.
And the other big thing was stepping back your training, because we spoke to even like, someone like Lucy Underdown, who's 28, but she works, she's she works shifts as a police officer and all that. And she was getting too tired. So basically she had a chat with her coach, and she started doing less training, and then she's just gone and broke a world record. So,
Mm,
it's, if
less
she
is
can do it,
more.
if you can do it, like it, it's not, you don't need to train more, you need to train better is the thing.
Smarter.
So, yeah.
Smarter.
Yeah.
Excellent. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Helen. Thank you so much, Pete. And we will be back next week for episode 224. We'll be joined by David Walsh, who is Sitting Bull UK, a disabled strongman, just been competing in the world's strongman disabled competition in Birmingham a couple of weeks ago. So we'll be joined by him next week for episode 224. Please do like, share, subscribe, leave a review if you're watching or listening on a platform that allows you to do so, especially Apple Podcasts. If you go onto Apple Podcasts and leave us a review, we will read it out on the podcast, and we will send you out some free merch, t-shirt or hoodie. You just let us know and we will do that. Next week will be, what's 6 plus 7? 13. It'll be the 13th of December. Next week, we're getting closer to Christmas. What date do you go to Australia, Helen?
15th.
15th. Okay, so you'll be in Australia pretty soon. Anyway, we will see you next week for episode 224. Until then, bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.